إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله فاللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O dear Muslims, Allah Azza wa Jal commands us to have the taqwa of Allah, which is of course the fear of Allah, the consciousness of Allah as is rightfully due to Allah, and do not die except as Muslims. And in fulfilling this is the belief in what is called in Arabic al-ghayb, which is the unseen, or something that is hidden, something that is beyond our human experience. And Allah Azza wa Jal says this in His book. In fact, it is the first thing that He talks about after Surah Al-Fatiha. Of course, the opening chapter, which is the most important chapter in the Quran. But then right soon after, He talks about now the details of that surah. Because in fact, the entirety of the Quran is merely an explanation of that first opening chapter. Those 7 verses are now explained throughout the rest of the book. So the first thing that Allah Azza wa Jalla chooses to explain is the belief in the unseen. Where He says, Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That book in which there is no doubt. It is guidance to the people of taqwa. This taqwa, right? We said it is the fear and consciousness of Allah. Who are al-muttaqeen? Who are these people who have taqwa? The first characteristic is الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, the ones who believe in the unseen. Today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will talk about this belief. Because, and it is important, and this is of course in light of our last khutbah from last week, in which we talked about doing the things for the sake of the hereafter, and not just doing them for the sake of the herein alone. And that a person has to find this balancing act. And so today, building upon this, is the idea of the belief in the unseen. Because we live in a day and age when materialism and physicality are the name of the game. Meaning that the focus is almost purely on materialistic means, and materialistic goals, and materialistic ways of doing things. And today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will contrast this materialism with the idea of Islam. That Islam tells you to believe in the unseen, but to not forget the material aspect as well. But that there has to be a balance act in this as well. Because some Muslims might go to an extreme and they only rely on the unseen without any regard to the actual physical world that they live in, without any practicality. And there are Muslims that go to the other extreme where they say you have to rely purely on the practical means, and the unseen is merely meant just for stories or for you to preoccupy yourself. And it really has no effect or no real, subhanallah, existence. Because it's unseen, they say. So today, inshallah, we will look and find the middle ground, which is what Islam wants us to do. With this said, the belief in the ghaib, of course, is the belief in anything unseen. The first and most important aspect of this is, of course, the belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. And of course, we all understand this, and this perhaps by itself needs khutbah and durus just to entail the belief in Allah Azza wa Jal, the Supreme Creator, the one who has not begotten. He was not begotten, nor did He beget. And of course, there is nothing like Him in this existence. We believe in His angels. And many Muslims say, yeah, I believe in the angels in a theoretical aspect. But we believe as Muslims in a very practical way that when you think about it, you do have 2 angels on your right and on your left writing your deeds. Is this crossing your mind every time you want to do a deed, whether it is good or bad? This is the practical aspect of the belief in the angels. The belief in the angels entails that when you come to the masjid on the day of Friday, you know that there are angels standing at the door of the masjid. This is from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And he says these angels are taking the names down of everyone who comes to the masjid. And that as soon as the adhan is made, which was just made, we know that the angels close their books and they stop writing names. Meaning if you show up to the masjid after the adhan is called, your name is no longer recorded. Meaning that you get the reward. Meaning you are just, at this point, fulfilling an obligation, perhaps. May Allah Azza wa Jal, if Allah Azza wa Jal of course wants to give you reward, this is from Him. But we know that the angels close their books as soon as the adhan is made, and they go and they sit, subhanAllah, to listen to the remembrance of Allah. This is what the true belief in Allah's angels entails. It is not merely just a fairy tale where we say it, we believe in the angels and it's theoretical. No, we believe it in a very practical sense. We believe it that when a person recites Ayatul Kursi before he goes to sleep, that Allah sends down an angel with an unsheathed sword, standing by his bedside, protecting him from any evil that will befall him that night. We believe in it in a very real sense. And this is why, subhanAllah, many of the Sahaba themselves, they would say, if you do not feel shame in front of Allah, at least feel shame in front of these angels that are with you. Have that in mind, because the angels are right there next to you. Would you want these angels, that are people, really, I mean not human people, they're angels, they have personalities, they have intellect, they have thought. Would you want to do in front of them anything that you would do in front of another person? You would not. And so the belief in Allah's angels entails a very real aspect. We believe in a soul for our bodies. And subhanAllah, even materialistic people now are coming to some conclusions that there perhaps is something known as a soul, or something known as a spirit, and that there are aspects of spirituality. Yet subhanAllah, we do not understand this at all. In fact, when they came to the Prophet ﷺ, the people of Quraysh, and they had a question for him, and Allah Azza wa Jal quotes their question, He says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنَ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the soul. قُلُ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Say, this soul is from the affairs of my Lord, and you have not been given from this knowledge except a little. Meaning you've only been given a little bit of knowledge. Because if you ask somebody who might believe in a soul or a spirit, describe it for me. What is it made out of? Where is it? What happens when it exits the body? Do you see it exiting the body? We do not see any of this. We do not experience it. In fact, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. That if you had any ability, you would have returned the soul back to the body that it was being taken out of, giving life back to death. But of course you can't. Even though you are right there at the moment of death. How many times have we seen this? I have seen it, many other people have seen it. A person dying right in front of you. Can you return the soul back in? As hard as you try, you cannot. And this is what Allah Azza wa Jalla describes. This is from, of course, the unseen. We believe that Allah Azza wa Jalla has created a shaitan, Satan, a devil. And that the real effect of this devil is that he tries to take us away from the straight path. Just like he went astray, he wants to make us astray as well. And that he whispers to us to do things. And we understand that this has a real effect. We see it. We get evil thoughts in our mind. We get the urges to do things that perhaps we wouldn't have the propensity to do otherwise. Yet on the Day of Judgment, when we come, we cannot use shaitan as an excuse. We know this. In fact, shaitan himself says, وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُم مِّن سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. He says, I did not have any authority over you. Meaning, I wasn't holding a gun to your head or a knife to your neck, right? Urging you to do whatever it is. I merely called you. I invited you to something. I said, isn't this nice? فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي, and you answered. It was on you. It says, do not blame me, but blame yourselves. Because this is truly what's going on. But a materialistic idea would say, no, this is merely your own thoughts, meaning you had this within yourself. And really, shaitan is just a tale that we tell each other in order for us to explain perhaps some things that we do not understand, that we cannot fully comprehend. But this is the idea. The unseen is that which we cannot fully understand or comprehend or experience. But Allah Azza wa Jalla has told us about. And His Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has told us about. And people have experiences, of course, that are even more and stronger than this, that go beyond just merely fairy tales. Imagine now if you were a Sahabi, a companion of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you're sitting down with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And all of a sudden the Prophet ﷺ starts shaking and trembling. And then he starts reciting some verses that you have never heard before. This was the experience of the Sahaba when the Prophet ﷺ would be revealed to, meaning the angel Jibreel would come and inspire him and revealed to him the verses of Allah Azza wa Jal to his heart and in his mind. And so imagine you're sitting there, many people perhaps wish that they could have been Sahaba, right? We hear this all the time. I wish I could have lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. I wish that I could have fought with him in the battles. I wish. But if you think about the true test that they went through, Wallah, it is a severe test. That you're sitting there, there's a man who starts shaking and trembling, and then he starts reciting verses, and now you have to apply them. On the spot, you can't even think about it. You can't say, you know what, I'm going to go home and take a few days and think about what you just said, and then apply them. No. You have to apply them right as you are hearing them. This is why sometimes we don't fully comprehend or appreciate what their experience was. Because they had to fully apply this, subhanAllah, on the spot, and then believe that there was just now an angel Jibreel alayhi salam, who was coming to the Prophet ﷺ and inspiring him with what he just actually recited. This is a test. But of course we believe in it. We believe that this is actually what took place. And we know that there are so many proofs that prove this, that it is beyond proving at this khutbah. But that we have to believe in it. A purely materialistic way would have said, oh no, he was probably just thinking about it or coming up with it. And we know, of course, this is false, because the Prophet ﷺ never was a writer, nor he was a reader, and that he was not known to do this beforehand. And we know that these are the words of Allah Azza wa Jal, miraculous words that He has challenged all of humanity to come up with even one chapter of, and they have still proven futile, meaning no one has been able to, and no one will. There are, of course, many things that a Muslim sees in his life. We know these as karamat, meaning they are miraculous things, supernatural things that have no physical or materialistic explanation. We believe in them. And this is part of being a Muslim. That many times, if you talk to a purely materialistic person, or a person who only believes in the physical world as is, would write them off and say, well, it could have been something. They try to explain it in many ways and they cannot. And then we as Muslims, we believe in them that Allah Azza wa Jal has supported His believers in the past. He continues to support them in the present, and He will continue to support them in the future, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, through these unseen measures. Whether it is through providing them with angels to support them throughout their lives, protecting angels, supporting angels. We know in the Battle of Badr, Allah Azza wa Jal provides thousands of angels to the believers during the battlefield in order to ensure victory. And then He only did that to reassure the believers who already believe in them. And many of the stories of the Sahaba, they will tell that they used to see heads flying off of bodies without anything being happening. They cannot see the angel that's taking care of this, but they see the effect clearly in front of them. And then Allah Azza wa Jal is doing this to teach us a lesson. What is the lesson? The lesson, we get it from the Battle of Hunayn. The Battle of Hunayn, in which was right after the conquest of Mecca. And of course the Prophet ﷺ marches on to these tribes that were nearby Mecca with 12,000 Muslim soldiers. Imagine, just 6 years before, he could only muster 300 in the Battle of Badr. 5 years before, he could only muster 1,000 at the Battle of Uhud. And of course we know what happened at that battle. 5 years later, he has 12,000. The Muslims who were there when they only had 300 are now seeing that we have 12,000. Some of them started to say, you know what, today we will not lose because of numbers. Right? We have 12,000, there's no way. Despite the fact that they were meeting an army of 25,000, meaning the army that they were meeting was twice as large as theirs, but this didn't affect them in any way because they saw their own numbers and were like, there's no way we're going to lose today. Guess what happened? Allah Azza wa Jalla taught them a lesson in which they suffered a severe defeat in the beginning of the battle because of the arrogance that happened in their mind. They said, oh look, we're this big, this is how much we have. Allah Azza wa Jalla taught them a lesson that, look, victory is not because of physicality and materialism. It's not because of numbers. It's not because of power, of might, of anything like this. It is because of Allah alone. Yet Allah still requires you to take your preparations. This is why in the Battle of Badr, when there were only 300, they could have said, you know what? If we rely upon Allah alone, all we need to do is start making dua and pray, and let's just march in, run into the battlefield. Yet the Prophet ﷺ beforehand was asking the Sahaba for ideas, recommendations, give me advice. What do you see? One of the Sahaba comes and he says, where are we camped Is this from you or from Allah? Meaning, is this inspired from Allah or did you just choose it randomly? And the Prophet ﷺ said, I just chose it as a place. It's not from Allah. He says, I think rather we should go towards where the water is. Which of course there was a well there, and it was known as the well of Badr. And let's go there, and let's camp there because this will give us an advantage. And he did. This is the balance of Islam. It tells you to rely upon Allah in everything that you do, but you also do everything that you can physically do as well to prepare. Not only for the battle, but for our lives that we live. And this is the important message of today. That a materialistic approach would have said, you know what, when they were 12,000, there's no way that they can be defeated. But they were defeated. And the purely spiritual would have said, if they were only 300, it doesn't matter even if they were one. The Prophet could have fought by himself. Because Allah is on his side, He doesn't need the rest of them. But we as Muslims take the middle path. We say, do whatever you can, because Allah Azza wa Jalla is the creator of all of this. But you should rely and put your heart and mind and soul with Allah Azza wa Jalla and not on your preparations. You say, I am al-abdul faqir. I am the poor servant of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and I have no way, no might, no power except through Allah Azza wa Jalla. And He is the one who can help me, He is the one who can assist me in all of our affairs. May Allah Azza wa Jalla assist us all and guide us all to the best of affairs. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah, amma ba'd. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in a hadith, نُصِرْتُ بِالرُّعْبِ مَسِيرَةَ شَهْرٍ. He says, I have been given victory through fear, the distance of 1 month. What this means is that the Prophet ﷺ has been aided through Allah Azza wa Jalla, and of course the Muslims, the closest of them following His Sunnah, of course, will get a benefit of this through fear alone. And subhanAllah, this fear was seen in the past that when the Prophet ﷺ marched upon the battle of Tabuk with his army, and of course it was the largest Muslim army gathered at that time, it was the last of course conquest that he participated in, the Roman army and all of their allies from the Arab tribes that were Christian at the time, they fled from the battlefield. They didn't even meet him on the battle because they were so feared, they were so afraid of meeting the Prophet ﷺ and his Sahaba on the battlefield. Yet this also applied to subsequent generations. It is said that upon the conquest of Barcelona in Spain, and this was of course when it was Muslim Spain, Al-Andalus, it is said upon conquering Barcelona, the Muslims conquered it at one point, actually multiple times. There were some Muslims in Constantinople, Al-Qustantiniya at the time, before it was Istanbul. This is about 400 years before Istanbul was actually going to be conquered. And it is said that when news of the conquering of Barcelona, which was a big city at the time, reached them, they closed the gates of their city for an entire week out of fear that the Muslims might continue marching and reach Constantinople. Even though the distance between Spain and Turkey is known, it's thousands of miles. But the fear that it caused that the Muslims might attempt to come and conquer this city was there and in their hearts. If you ask a Muslim today, what do you know about Barcelona? They will tell you, oh, I know the football club, right? The soccer club that's there. And they will be able to name off every person who's starting on the team, subhanAllah. 11 players, they'll name off the 11 right then and there. If you ask them 11 Sahaba, would they be able to name 11? Or 11 prophets? This is unfortunately why we are in the state that we are in. When we know only about a city that used to be a Muslim city that we were able to, subhanAllah, rule with justice and subhanAllah with kindness and mercy. They don't know this, but they know, subhanAllah, what is being sold to them. This is why we need to change our affairs and we need to return to the belief in al-ghayb, in this unseen, that Allah Azza wa Jal, of course, Wallah is high, mightier than anything else. And subhanAllah, there is much more to be said about all of this. But the message that I wanted to impart is that Islam is a universal religion. It is a comprehensive religion. It does not reject one side for the other. When a person is feeling sick, we do not say, you know what, go and see a doctor and all of these things, but ignore the spiritual aspect of your sickness. Do not read Quran, do not read dua, do not do any of these things. And on the opposite side, we do not do the opposite, which is where we tell a person, you don't need to go to a doctor, all you need is to do some ruqyah and we can recite some Quran and you'll be fine, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ told us, tadawu. You have to go and seek medicine, you have to go and seek a doctor. The Prophet ﷺ himself did this. And we have a best example in him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And yet he also did the ruqyah, he also recited the Quran, he also made the dua. And this is of course the comprehensive of Islam. That we take whatever physical measures we can, but we put our trust in Allah Azza wa Jalla, that He is of course the one who's in His hand is the cure. He is the one who can cure you. He is the one that despite all of the medicine, perhaps He can say, you know what, the cure is not written upon you, it is written upon you that you, may Allah Azza wa Jalla forgive us and have mercy upon us, die. Or the opposite, that whatever medicine is being done, the cure actually was before all of that medicine. And of course we have seen cases on both sides. Wallah, we have seen cases where they tell the patient you have cancer and there is no cure and you have about a month to live. But then they go back and they do ruqyah and they do Quran and so on and so forth, and they go and they say, you know what? Your cancer is in remission. It is completely fading away, it is completely gone. And wallahi, we have seen this. I have met people that this has happened to. And on the opposite side, as much Quran as they recite, Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed in His decree that of course, it's not to be done. This is Allah's decree. And this is why we believe in Allah, and we believe in His qadr, and we believe in the unseen. And this is why we take measures in both. And this is why we cannot continue to live purely materialistic lives. We cannot. We see the effects of the unseen world upon us. Wallahi, we see them. I mean, in a day and age, I'll mention this very quickly. When, subhanAllah, science is now coming to the conclusion that our physical universe is only about 1% of the entire universe, and that 25% is made out of dark matter, and 75% is, or 74% or whatever it is made out of dark energy. And you ask them, how do you know this? Because they cannot detect it through any materialistic means. They cannot detect it through, they say we see the effects of it. And it shows up in the math. We tell them, if you see the effects of something unseen like this, how can you not see the effects of the unseen Allah Azza wa Jalla, the Creator? And denying of the Creator, but then accepting these anomalies is, subhanAllah, very curious. When they tell you everything that you experience is only 1% of the universe. So subhanAllah, may Allah Azza wa Jalla grant us the ability to continue to believe in the unseen, and to continue to seek Allah's help in everything that we do, and lead us and help us and lead us and guide us to a balanced life, one that is neither completely removed from the materialistic world nor completely removed from that spiritual and unseen world. عباد الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين أعداءك أعداء الدين ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة إلا قضيتها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات المؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات يا قاضي الحاجات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعوات يا رب العالمين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقم الصلاة